Stop looking at the fighter jets. The next confrontation over the Aegean may not be decided in a dogfight at 30,000 feet. It may be decided by what Greece can see, jam, and destroy before it ever reaches the islands. A cheap drone changed the rules of war. The Bayraktar TB2 didn't just win attention in Libya, Nagorno-Karabakh, and Ukraine. It sold a doctrine. Cheap pressure can exhaust expensive defense, swarms can overload systems. And for Greece, sitting just across the water from Turkish coastlines, that doctrine had a single uncomfortable name: threat. Because a cheap drone is not dangerous because of what it can destroy. It is dangerous because of what it forces the defender to spend. That was the trap. Then, Greece started building its answer. In 2025, Athens unveiled the largest defense modernization program in its modern history. More than €28 billion roadmap through 2036. At its center sits one project, Achilles' Shield. Not one weapon, not one missile battery. A layered architecture designed to fuse radars, sensors, jamming, command systems, and interceptors into a single coordinated response. And the key partner behind it is Israel, the country that has spent decades learning how to survive rockets, missiles, drones, and saturation attacks. Ankara's response came fast. $6.5 billion in contracts. Its own air defense program. They called it the Steel Dome. 2 rivals, 2 shields, 1 race to secure the sky. The question is not whether Greece has a new air defense system. The question is whether Turkey's cheap drone advantage is beginning to break before the next Aegean crisis even begins. To understand why Greece is preparing to spend tens of billions on defense, you have to understand what Erdogan was actually selling. Blue Homeland was never purely a military doctrine. It was an economic pressure system. Turkey expanded its claimed maritime and air rights across the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean, not because Ankara expected a full-scale war tomorrow morning. It did it because constant pressure forces Greece to respond. Every scramble costs fuel. Every alert drains readiness. Every new threat triggers a new upgrade cycle. Every drone forces Athens to ask the same exhausting question: how much are we willing to spend to stop something Turkey can produce at scale? That was the arithmetic. Ankara produces drones at volume. Athens produces responses at cost. And for years, that logic was working. Because the Bayraktar TB2 was never only about what it could destroy. It was about what it forced the other side to spend. A drone costing a few $1,000,000 can compel a defender to activate radars, scramble aircraft, expose positions, and prepare interceptors that cost far more than the target itself. That is the hidden genius of cheap air power. It turns defense into a financial burden. A cheap drone is not cheap because of what it costs Turkey. It is cheap because of what it forces Greece to spend to stop it. This was the trap Erdogan built, slowly, methodically, over years. And Greece, for a long time, had to operate inside it. More radars, more intercepts, more air defense planning, more budget pressure. Athens was being pushed toward a defense model that could become endless and endlessly expensive. Then, someone in Athens asked a different question. What if we stop trying to match Turkey drone for drone? What if we make the drone strategy itself less effective? That is where Achilles' Shield changes the geometry. This is not just another procurement, it is a doctrine shift. Greece is not trying to build a larger drone empire than Turkey. It is trying to build the architecture that makes Turkey's drone empire less useful in the Aegean. 5 defensive layers, different ranges, different threat profiles, different methods of response. A TB3 launched from TCG Anadolu, a cruise missile flying low over the sea, a drone swarm designed to saturate radars, a ballistic missile meant to produce political shock. Each threat is different. So Greece is not building one answer, it is building a system of answers. Athens is not just buying a shield, Athens is redesigning the cost of escalation, and this explains the Israeli choice. Greece had options, American upgrades, European short-range systems, domestic development programs. But Israel offered something no one else could: experience under fire. IAI and Rafael do not build air defense for theory. They build it for a country that has spent decades facing rockets, ballistic missiles, low-altitude drones, cruise missile threats, and saturation attacks. There is no laboratory fantasy behind these systems. There is a combat record. So when Greece turns to Israeli air defense, it is not buying political symbolism. It is buying technology shaped by real attacks, real interceptions, and real lessons learned under live fire. Erdogan's doctrine was designed for adversaries without layered responses, adversaries forced to fight on his economic terms. Greece is becoming the layered response. That is not a defense upgrade. That is the trap, reversed. By the way, only 18% of viewers are subscribed. If this kind of deep dive geopolitics matters to you, like and subscribe. Let's keep revealing what others miss. Before we go further, one correction matters. What Greece is building is not a Greek Iron Dome. Iron Dome is the symbol the world knows. It intercepts short-range rockets over populated areas. A point defense system designed for a specific threat environment. Achilles Shield is a different idea entirely. Not one battery, not one launcher, not one miracle weapon. It is a layered operating system. Sensors, radars, command and control, electronic warfare, jamming, interceptors, combat-tested doctrine, all connected into a single operational picture. The valuable technology here is not any single weapon, it is the integration, and integration is what makes the shield dangerous. The first layer is short-range. SPYDER, developed by Rafael in Israel, built to counter drones, cruise missiles, and low-altitude threats. The exact class of threat Turkey has built its drone doctrine around. TB2s, TB3s, loitering munitions, threats trying to slip under the radar at attack profiles conventional systems were never designed to track. SPYDER does not make drones disappear, it forces them into a defended sky. The second layer is the medium-range transition zone, Barak MX, developed by Israel Aerospace Industries, an operational export system. This is the layer built for saturation, multiple targets, multiple directions, multiple speeds. The real danger is not one drone. It is the package, a decoy first, then a drone, then a cruise missile, then electronic interference, then another wave from another angle. That is saturation warfare. Barak MX prevents saturation from becoming chaos. The third layer is the heavy missile layer, David's Sling, Rafael and Raytheon. This belongs to the class of systems designed for ballistic missile threats, the kind Turkey is developing through programs like Typhoon. Mach 5 velocities, hundreds of kilometers of range, able to reach strategic targets from launch positions deep inside Anatolia. This is not about a drone over the sea. This is about the moment a missile becomes political pressure, a strike weapon that can threaten cities, bases, ports, or energy infrastructure. David's Sling was built for the moment when diplomacy is ended and the missiles are already in the air. The fourth layer is Patriot. Greece already operates Patriot, and Greek operators are no longer dealing only with theory. In March 2026, Greek personnel operating a Patriot battery in Saudi Arabia intercepted 2 Iranian ballistic missiles. That does not make Achilles Shield combat tested. It is not. But it does mean Greek air defense experience is now connected to real missile warfare. And that experience feeds directly into how Greece designs, deploys, and integrates the new architecture. And then comes the layer that changes the money. Centauros, electronic warfare, jamming, future-directed energy systems. This is the economics layer. Because Erdogan's drone logic depends on one equation: cheap drone, expensive response. Layer 5 is designed to break that equation. If a drone can be jammed, confused, blinded, or disabled at a fraction of the cost of a kinetic interceptor, the asymmetry that drove Turkey's air doctrine begins to reverse at the most fundamental level. This is where artificial intelligence enters, not as magic, not as science fiction, as the decision brain. If fully integrated, Achilles' Shield is designed to help operators decide which threat gets tracked, which gets jammed, which gets ignored, and which gets intercepted, and by which layer. A drone launched from a Turkish vessel in the Aegean does not face one Greek system. It faces a network built to find the cheapest, fastest, smartest way to neutralize the threat before it reaches the defended zone. 5 layers, 3 Israeli platforms, decades of combat data, 1 brain. This is not a defense upgrade. This is an architecture. €3 billion. That is the estimated cost of the Israeli layer of Achilles Shield alone, not a commercial arms deal. A government-to-government framework, a transaction written at the level of states, not salesmen. But the real number is bigger, €28 billion through 2036. Year after year, Greece is committing billions to rebuild the military architecture of the state. This is not just a defense budget, it is a doctrine statement. It says Athens is no longer waiting for the next crisis to begin before preparing for it. But inside this story, there is one detail most people will miss. Greek companies are expected to participate in roughly 25% of the Achilles Shield project. That changes everything. Because Greece is not simply importing a shield. Greece is trying to build an industry around the shield. The system creates the engineers who will maintain it. The contracts create the companies that will upgrade it. The technology transfer creates the base for the next generation of Greek defense systems. For a country that spent years under austerity, watching parts of its industrial base weaken, this is not only strategic, it is personal. Achilles Shield is not just a wall in the sky. It is a 20-year industrial policy disguised as air defense. And then comes the American layer. In 2024, the United States approved the sale of 20 F-35 fighters to Greece, with options for up to 40. Greece is entering the most advanced fighter ecosystem in the West. Turkey is not. In 2019, Erdogan accepted delivery of the Russian S-400 system. Washington forced the choice, S-400 or F-35. Ankara chose the S-400 and lost the F-35 path. That decision still shapes the air balance today. Greece is moving toward 5th-generation integration. Turkey is trying to build Aegean, its own future fighter, but Aegean remains a prototype chasing an operational date that keeps moving. So the real gap is not only aircraft, it is access. Some analysts describe this as a prepaid card. America quietly loading Greece with strategic credit after losing trust in Ankara. The factual version is more precise. The United States is not handing Athens a blank check, it is giving Greece something almost as valuable. Access, F-35 approvals, FMS channels, interoperability protocols, strategic cover at NATO level, permission to enter the high-end Western defense ecosystem at the exact moment Turkey was pushed outside its most advanced layer. That is the real currency. Washington gets reliable access points, Suda Bay, Alexandroupolis, Larissa, Andravida. Israel gets a NATO-integrated customer for combat-tested systems. Greece gets hardware, integration, and industrial participation. 3 partners, 3 interests, 1 convergence. And this is where energy becomes military. The 3+1 framework, Greece, Cyprus, Israel, and the United States, began around energy, gas fields, pipelines, regional stability. Egypt operates beside it as a parallel energy and security pillar. But gas fields need protection, cables need protection, ports need protection. So intelligence sharing deepens, exercises expand, air defense cooperation becomes logical. Achilles' Shield is the military expression of a financial relationship that already existed. The money came first, the shield followed. There is no treaty, no Article 5, no mutual defense clause, no formal command structure. What exists between Greece, Cyprus, Israel, and the United States is something quieter, but every bit as consequential in a crisis. A convergence of interests no single speech created and no single leader can dissolve. Cyprus provides basing and intelligence depth in the Eastern Mediterranean. Israel contributes combat-tested technology and real-time threat expertise. Egypt operates beside the framework as an energy and security partner. Greece anchors the European and NATO entry point. Washington provides the strategic cover, the FMS channels, and the permission structure that turns individual capabilities into collective deterrence. This is what an energy map becomes when it develops a military shadow, not through a signing ceremony, but through years of joint exercises, shared intelligence, and the quiet logic that gas fields and underwater cables do not protect themselves. And it is from this convergence that Turkey excluded itself. The S-400 choice cost Ankara the F-35 path, triggered sanctions, and complicated NATO interoperability. Those are the visible costs. But the deeper cost may be the one that never appears in any contract. While Greece, Cyprus, Israel, Egypt, and the United States built the habits of cooperation that make integrated air defense possible, Turkey was outside the room. Erdogan bought the signal. Greece kept the access. That difference now shapes more than the air balance. It shapes who participates in the region's future security architecture and who has to build their own. Turkey is not standing still. In April 2025, the TB3 demonstrated autonomous operations from TCG Anadolu. That is real capability. A naval drone extending blue homeland's reach, eyes in the sky, potentially a strike arm at sea. But the TB3 is not entering an undefended sky. It is entering the airspace this documentary has just mapped, redesigned specifically against the threat class it represents. Then came Ankara's response. November 2025, $6.5 billion in contracts for its own national air defense project, the Steel Dome. Turkey is no longer only projecting drone pressure, it is now racing to defend itself from the same missile and drone age it helped accelerate. But Greece moved first into the Israeli Western architecture. Turkey is trying to build its answer while still carrying the cost of the decision that put it outside. That is the new asymmetry. Blue Homeland was built on the assumption that pressure could stay cheap. Achilles' Shield challenges that assumption, and the trap Erdogan spent years constructing. It is no longer only Greece that has to ask how much it is willing to spend. So what actually changes? Achilles' Shield does not make Greece untouchable. It does not end Turkish drone production. It does not close the Aegean, and it was never supposed to. What it changes is the cost of the next move. For years, Turkey's advantage was arithmetic. A cheap drone could force an expensive response. A small aircraft could create a large bill. A swarm could turn defense into exhaustion, not because Greece couldn't shoot it down, but because shooting it down cost more than launching it. That was the trap. Achilles' Shield is the answer, not to the drone, to the math. Every radar integrated, every jammer deployed, every Israeli layer connected to Greek command, every domestic company brought into the supply chain. Each piece changes the calculation Ankara has to make before the next provocation, the next test, the next crisis. The Aegean does not become peaceful, it becomes priced. And sometimes, in geopolitics, that is the only victory that matters. Today's sponsor is you. No algorithm decides what gets made here. No advertiser shapes the angle. This channel exists because viewers who take geopolitics seriously decide that deeper analysis is worth supporting. So if Money Trail gives you value, consider becoming a member below. It directly helps us build the next investigation, the next map, the next story behind the headlines. And before you leave, watch the 2 videos on your screen now. They explore the deeper architecture of power in the Eastern Mediterranean, beyond the headlines, beyond the speeches. Because Achilles' Shield is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new balance over the region.